Some days it's just good to hear the little theme song. You know what I mean? It just kind of perks you up. I used to have a radio show on an AM radio station. We had a Bruce Springsteen theme song for the beginning intro like this. And I was in a grocery store one time and that song came on and I literally started saying AM 950, the progressive talk in Minnesota, like in my head.
Were you able to license a Bruce Springsteen song for your radio show?
No, but there's a thing about radio where there's like some number of seconds that you can play that stuff. Because it's radio versus, like, I don't think we could do it here as a podcast. They would be honest within, a nanosecond. The AI would be. But if you just pump it out over
2 or 3
over the radio, that's right.
Anything
out of business.
And is anything happening today for us to talk about?
Well, there's a thing or two because today is April 4th. So happy April 4th. Also, Rob, all the empathy and sympathy and good care to you good people in Arkansas. Multiple tornadoes and severe weather events. Huge day.
Far from where I live, I'm in the northwest corner of Arkansas, and the tornado hit in Little Rock. But many friends affected by it, and and it sounds like we, might be in for more later today, and into the evening. So it's I don't know. I know that weather is not climate, but climate affects weather, and it certainly feels like something's happening.
And what it is, it ain't exactly clear.
No.
As we'll probably get to, there's more people with a gun over there now because there's now 26 states that allow you just to carry them around. Ridiculous. But sometimes I wonder, are natural disasters more worrisome or human-made disasters like Donald Trump? Is he somehow just make it worse when it's, people doing it to ourselves? I happen to think. But today is also the day Donald Trump will be formally arrested as a criminal. Arrested. You can say a lot of things. You can call it Indictment Day. You can say there's an arraignment hearing. It is those. It's also the day when he will be told, Mr. Trump, you are under arrest.
Yeah. You have
just
the right
let that sink in for a moment.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
That you're about to walk into. It is, look, and people get arrested a lot. There's a lot of arrests that happen. It goes on. It's for some people, it really changes their lives. For other people, it doesn't really have a huge impact. But it's a day in which someone who sees himself as an important player in world affairs to be brought to a state courthouse and have a local district attorney say, I'm going to take control of your custody for the next 30 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever, however long the arraignment takes. Before then, he's released on his own recognizance and able to go. For that other period of time, he is not free to get up and move about the cabin. He is not free to do what he wants. He cannot say anything he wants. He is in a situation where a legal police entity is saying to him, you will do what we order you to do. And I'll tell you, as somebody who has been arrested, I've been arrested. The only times I've been arrested are formally arrested were for things that I chose to be arrested for. But when you're put in police custody, there is a solemn seriousness to that is unshakable. And this guy knows, as I think as we assume, this isn't going to be the last time in the next 12 months that a court-appointed law enforcement officer says to him, you are under arrest. It is such a day. It's just really, really hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a number of really kind of interesting factors going on. One is, the question of whether or not cameras will be allowed in the courtroom. Can you imagine it? It sounds like the judge is not going to allow cameras in the courtroom, which I think I'm glad about. I mean, like the circus that this would be would
Yeah,
just be all consuming and overwhelming.
for sure.
I mean, we would be, Doug, we would be live streaming the Trump trial and, commenting on, like,
Without question.
it would consume our lives. So I'm glad about that, because I don't want my life to be consumed by this. Uh, the the indictment has been under seal, and so we don't know what Donald Trump has been indicted for. Um, we assume that it has to do with this Stormy Daniels payment, um, and we assume that there is some kind of campaign finance violation as a result. Um, CNN was reporting that there was like 34 counts uh, on the indictment, which just sounded astronomical to me. Made me think that if that's accurate, it's got to be something um, beyond the Stormy Daniels situation. It
Yeah.
Because I don't see how the Stormy Daniels situation um, leads to 34 counts of,
Well, there
you
were
know,
30. I heard a way that it
yeah, yeah.
happens. There were 13 checks that were written to cover all these expenses.
Oh,
Each one of those checks was a part of this crime. And so each time one of those was entered into a business ledger and then pushed forward as
mhm.
business fraud, that becomes another count. So that's one of the ways that people have said you can rack up a lot of counts.
That
Like he
gets you
didn't
to
do it
26.
he didn't do it just once. He did it a bunch of times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way.
Yep.
Or the other is that they've put these together into a picture where the collective number of activities moves to another crime altogether. And
Yeah.
that's what's going to be interesting, is if it's a federal crime. I don't know if you guys feel this way, but back when the Gulf War started, and it was predicated on the idea that there were weapons in Iraq that we needed to do something about, right? That was very precarious stuff. But I remember watching the news and thinking, there sure better be weapons there, right? And then remember when the forces went in and it was like, now they're going to find them, and the news was reporting, and day after day it was, we didn't find any weapons. We didn't. It turns out Iraq was lying about it. It turns out that partners were lying about it. It turns out the
Yep.
CIA was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like to have to deal with the recognition that all the weight and force of the federal government could get that wrong has been a real pause for me in a lot of like, that was an adulting moment when it comes to the way our government acts. I have been saying to myself, there's been a grand jury that's been in place on this. There have been multiple witnesses. There's an entire formal apparatus. This is not one DA simply saying,
Yeah.
I think let's go arrest the guy, bring him in, see if we can shake the tree a little and get something out of him, right? This is not like a street cop just shaking up a petty criminal on the street. They have gone through exhaustive and serious consideration with lawyers and judges and all manner of things. Says to me, there's no way they're going to come in with just like, he lied on a business form, he said something that wasn't true, he misallocated expenses. If that's what it turns out to be, though, and
Yeah.
technically that is a crime, that is going to
Yeah.
not that is not going to land well. So to your point,
Yeah.
there better be something in here that's not just 34 charges of the same thing on a wash, rinse, repeat. Because if that happens, man, not only is it going to be a problem for this case, it's going to shake the confidence of the Georgia case. It's going to shake
Yeah.
people's confidence in the two federal indictments that are likely to come, one about January 6th and one about stealing documents and performing a cover-up. It's there's a lot riding on this.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Um, Doug, do you feel like this has broken the glass ceiling, so to speak, in terms of indictment, that now maybe Georgia happens more quickly, or one or both of those federal indictments happen more quickly? Do you have that sense that, okay, now, we've Yeah, like we've gotten into the cold water. We might as well,
Yeah.
like, do the full body immersion at this point.
I,
Or
I,
do,
I,
or is that not, is it not
uh,
factor in legal proceedings?
it seems like there's a calendar in Georgia that where an indictment's going to come out in May. I mean, there's been some news stories about that, sort of how this is all laying out, because there's so many formalities that go into it. So there's been conversation that that's on its way. I do think what it changes, though, is that the next whoever has to move forward on the next indictment, the grand jury, will not have hanging over it the
Yeah.
additional question of, can we really do this? I mean, is this not only legally can we do it, but are we going to be the ones who are going to
Yeah.
make this determination? So I don't know. Maybe I guess I'm still starry-eyed enough about certain parts of our judicial system when they need to be under deep scrutiny, that they're they're not going to be putting out indictments that they're not very
Yes.
confident in the efficacy
Yes.
of it.
Yes.
So I don't know, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm not worried like some people are, where they're like, "Hey, this just opened Pandora's box." Now,
No.
pick a place where there's a Trump DA, he's just going to bring charges against Joe Biden. Like, look, you could say you want to do that, but you need to have a crime. Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
know
the
that
funny
people are
part about all
saying
this.
no, they're just pick the man and then find the crime. Well, look, you could pick the three of us, and you could pick, Trisha and Paul and JC and the people that are going to be on this live stream. Go, come on, district attorney of Manhattan or federal prosecutor. I mean,
Not interested. I don't like this game. I don't like this game.
yeah, okay,
Like,
well, whatever
figure
you've
out
been
a
up
way
to,
to come on. Figure out a way to indict me.
figure out a
I'm
way
like,
to
I
indict
don't know.
me.
I don't like this
Look,
game.
it's
But
it's
that is
just
the
not true.
funny argument of like, well, if they can indict Trump on his crimes, they're coming for your crimes next. It's like, well, yeah, if you
Yeah.
commit crimes, they'll indict you.
Yes. Yes.
You would
If
think this is what the law and order president would be, is like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
making sure that we are, we're really wrapping up the criminals here because they got me. But that's such a ridiculous argument that it's just going to mean that now district
Yeah.
attorneys all over are going to be prosecute. They're not. First of
Yeah.
all, district attorneys don't
Yeah.
just willy-nilly do this. And the process it takes to put a grand jury in place and get a judge to sign off and get an indictment and get a court, you can't just do that stuff to
Yeah.
people on a without any kid. Now, I'm not saying there's not times where the prosecutors and justice system pressure people and lie and make up stuff and wrongly convict people. I'm not saying that, but there's normally a crime there before they do it. You're not just, and even if you're not guilty of that crime or you were falsely accused of the crime, you need to have a crime. So this thing that people are like, this is just a political prosecution turned persecution.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's something
Yeah.
we shouldn't be fearing.
Yeah. Something I've been thinking about is, the argument that this is just a political thing and, is so horrible. I mean, ultimately, you have to answer the question, like, is it possible for a president or a presidential candidate to break the law? And if the answer to that is yes, then the question becomes, okay,
Nice.
what do you do about that? It needs to be investigated. Okay. And what if the investigation shows that there's sufficient evidence to go to a trial? Like, I mean,
Yep.
like the only way out of this is to say a president can't break the law, which is what Richard Nixon tried to do, right? And Trump has toyed with that defense as
Mm-hmm.
well, that a president can't break the law. It's a ridiculous argument. I mean, the people making that kind of argument are at the same time the people calling for investigations of Joe Biden. So it's just like, come on, like it's so
Mm-hmm.
if like just philosophically and logically, if the president can break the law,
Mm-hmm.
then there has to be like the normal legal system and legal process has to play out. And that is exactly what's happening here and now. Like it if he didn't do it, and we'll give him the presumption of innocence, wink wink, nod nod. Yeah, come on. We probably, the three of us probably wouldn't be on the jury, because I'm not sure we could be objective on this, because I think I don't know, wouldn't it be fun to be on this jury? I think he's guilty. I think he's guilty of all of these things. But legally speaking, he has the presumption of innocence, and he has the right to a trial, and
Yep.
a jury of his peers. We should think about who the jury of his peers should be.
Well, I mean, in this case, they could have Michael Flynn, they could have Michael Cohen, they could
Mike
have
Lindell,
Steve Bannon, they could have Weisselberg, they could have the other cadre of people around Donald Trump who have been also placed under arrest, either pled guilty or convicted, and are going to or have gone to jail. Again, the number of cut to scenes of people from his world around this particular issue and others that have gone to jail, it is it's more like a gang than it is anything else. Yeah. It's like unorganized crime with these people, and it's defrauding, and it's the same behavior over and over. But I do want to say this, though. I know we have this thing about a statement that everyone is equal under the law, right? Yes. Okay. So that's true.
That's an aspiration. That's not a reality.
Yeah. And legal. And I'm not even talking about how discretion is used by prosecutors, right? We can get to that for sure, right? Because that's always a thing. That's what people are talking about here. But just legally, there's a category of people, they're called, international diplomats, who actually are not under U.S. law. And we've seen stories of them. They've come into the United States. They've done all kinds of things. In New York, a bunch of them beat a guy up on the street.
Yeah, was it the ambassador from Turkey or something?
Right. And his gang, his gang of security guards beat a guy.
I don't know this story. Wow.
Yeah.
It was a couple years ago now,
yeah, it was
diplomatic immunity
for the UN thing. And they just put him on an airplane and just flew him out, because we have an agreement that certain people have diplomatic immunity and they're not under the laws of the United States. We also have a pardon process where a president or a governor, in certain conditions, can issue a pardon even before someone's been convicted, and they're just set free. The due process is cut short because a position, president or governor, can grant that. There are people making an argument that a president should be considered someone more like a diplomatic immunity case, or someone that just has a pardon. Truly, they're making this argument. Once you've become the president, it needs to be gloves off. That's that, because we can't have the system. We're too political. You can't have the system where it's a fair deal and all this. So that's an argument that we should try to have, because this is essentially the argument that these people are making, Rob, that you're getting at. And it's not just that they're being hypocritical. They're saying it's so political, there's no way we can have a fair case. So we should talk about that as a country and say, no. As it turns out, while you're president, maybe you can't be indicted because you've got other things to do, and we're going to have a workaround for 48 months or for 96 months. But after that, that's just a fundamental question we should ask, and not act like, well, we don't have a category of people that aren't able to be prosecuted. We do. We for sure do have those categories.
Yeah.
The question is somebody, just because they were president, one of them?
Yes. And we have precedent for people very high up in the executive branch of the federal government, facing the consequences of the crimes they've committed, whether it's Aaron Burr or Spiro Agnew,
deep cut. Yep.
Well, yeah, but you think back that if the founding fathers wanted to have some kind of build some kind of executive immunity into the system, certainly the Aaron Burr situation might have given them like the opportunity to do that. Like it would have been oh, well, maybe we ought to think about this, but it didn't happen and it doesn't exist. And we've
Right.
had, people high up in the executive branch of the federal government. And frankly, we've had people, who have served in executive branches in the state governments that have faced the consequences of the crimes they've committed. And,
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand. I think that if we are flippant about this, and we've joked about Trump because,
Sure.
because you have to for sanity's sake.
Yeah.
But
And it's
at the
just
same
fun
time,
sometimes. Yeah.
but at the same time, recognize this is a really big deal. Like this is a really weighty, substantial thing that is happening in our country, and it should not be flippant. It should not be, thrown around. Like the danger of it becoming inconsequential and politicized, like that danger, we need to recognize that yes, that danger is real, and the response to that danger is not, don't ever, indict a president. It's
That's right.
no, you do it when it has to be done, and you do it with a heavy heart and a sense
right.
of like, wow.
You get
Let's-
down, you get as serious as you can be as a legal system in these moments, because look, they have greater consequence. And I know we want to say just everybody's all the same, but look, when someone attacks an individual on the street, it's an assault and battery, and it's terrible and horrible. And we have a level of crime that we declare for that action. If you attack a police officer, it's a different level of crime, because the belief is you're not just attacking an individual, you're attacking the structures of society. If you attack a political person, elected office, if you attack a president, it's a different level. We don't call it a shooting when it's a political person. We call it an assassination, because we recognize that person is an indicator of a larger system. And that's the thing that is also under attack, right? So we have different categories of laws. It's not so simple as every action is just applied to a law and then someone's just convicted. We do whole different things depending on the circumstance and situation and intentions and all of this. So if we're going to prosecute a president, we should just recognize, and a former president, that is something different, just like it would be if he was assaulted or, if something horrible were to happen to him. We would declare it different. So we can recognize all that and still move forward. And by God, this is what Donald Trump has done to us. And in all things, there may be a gift here that Gerald Ford, back in, I think it was 1974 or something, made a determination as president to issue a full pardon to Richard Nixon, under the belief that the country could not withstand the prosecution of a president. I remember that deeply. It's in our psyche. It's actually created a normative expectation for people that we can't handle this. That world's decision from 1974 and from Gerald Ford, that just changed. A grand jury and a DA and others said it's now different.
Doug, you're talking about understanding the weightiness of this, understanding that there is, that this is a significant thing. Donald Trump recognizes that too. And he has positioned himself, he is positioned. This is not just any old arraignment. This is, martyrdom on par with, Jesus before Pontius Pilate. So, this, I don't know if folks are watching along live or if you're listening on the podcast, I'll read this for you. This is really a remarkable statement that Donald Trump allegedly made. So Secret Service have argued in favor of holding the proceedings outside of court business hours at night with minimal cameras and less risk. But Trump, a source close to his legal team, says, wants to create the type of scene he believes will galvanize his supporters. Here's the quote. It's kind of a Jesus Christ thing, he is saying. I'm absorbing all this pain from all around, from everywhere, so you don't have to, says the source, describing the message Trump hopes to send his supporters. The source says, if they can do this to me, they can do this to you, and that's a powerful message. So there's a messianic component to this that Trump is utilizing because he recognizes that this just isn't, this isn't just any old Tuesday. This is a big, big day.
It's a big day. And look, he's right. If there's legal authority to incarcerate someone or give other penalties to someone for criminal behavior, whether it's in your business forms or other collusions that you've done, yeah, they can do it to you too. So if you're committing fraud, again, this is what a law and order president should say, is if you commit crimes, we have a system to deal with those, and it will be applied to you. What Donald Trump is literally saying is, hey, we have a legal system that you have to be accountable to. And if I have to be accountable to it, you know what, everybody? Hey, really bad news. You too might be accountable to it. How that is spun as, so boy, we shouldn't be convicting this guy. What kind?
Right.
Look, I get it. I get the anarchist party. If the anarchist parties in politics were making this argument, or the libertarians overall that want there to be, a lack of jurisdiction on particular issues, right? Process crimes and all the rest of it. If this is the argument that they want to be making, we don't want to have a law and order system by which people are held accountable, then this argument, if they can do it to me, they can do it to you, and I'm going to absorb all the pain of you as if I'm sort of fulfilling the Jesus role. Turns out, Donald Trump is not fulfilling. He's not the Jesus character in this story. He's not even, one of the two thieves crucified next to him. He's in, I'm sure to his great frustration, the first time that he is being told, you are under arrest and you are under our custody, and we have criminal charges to convict you as a criminal, is not coming from the federal government. It's coming from a local district attorney in Manhattan. The idea for Donald Trump that these people, this district attorney in Manhattan, over what I did with my business forms and covering up, you think you're going to hold me accountable for that? I'll tell you, I'm just psychoanalyzing Donald Trump because, as you've told me, Rob, he lives rent-free in my head. So I've spent a lot of time imagining the world of Donald Trump. I bet that is making this so much worse for him that he's not actually battling the big forces of the federal government, the deep state. It's like I'm being driven downtown where I've lived and walked into this place where Donald Trump has demeaned over and over, calling people in that building common criminals, common scum. All the stuff he has said over his years in New York about people who are arrested and brought into that courthouse. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is not. So people can make the argument, which order should these have gone in? Is this one better or worse? I don't think that's how the law should be applied, but whatever. I get it. It could create.
It's really great though.
It could create a story.
Is anyone a little sad? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is anyone a little sad that we're not going to end up with like an O.J. Simpson white Bronco police chase with Trump? Maybe there's still time. Maybe he makes a last minute run for it.
Oh yeah.
But here's the other thing. One of the consequences of this.
I was just gonna say. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Yeah, one of the consequences of this and this martyr complex is this is a payday for Trump. We've got a story up on the screen that says Trump's fundraising halls challenged the crime doesn't pay adage. He raked in over $4 million in the first 24 hours. Yeah. And another $1 million in the second 24 hours.
Yeah, it's $7 million now as of this morning.
Yeah, he had the opportunity. he had the opportunity to be arraigned via Zoom,
Well,
and
apparently that
not.
may not be true. Did you hear that
Oh,
today? They're now pushing back on that might
uh,
have been some false reporting.
okay,
That
okay,
he wasn't given a Zoom option. I don't know if that's going to play out or not, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay. Well, it. I listen, Donald Trump. If we know anything about him, it's that he's someone who tries to profit off of everything, you know. And
Oh
so,
boy.
I mean, this is like, if he wasn't fundraising off of this, that would, in my mind, that would be a story. This is like you know, Ted Koppel used to say that like a plane landing safely is not a story. Like that's not
Mhm.
news. You know, like Donald Trump fundraising off of what's happening is not, like, this doesn't feel like news to me. As despicable as it is in some way, listen, we we sent out a Vote Common Good fundraiser, you know,
Mhm.
fundraising email over the fact that Donald Trump had been arrested. Other, some other political organizations I work with sent out fundraising emails based
Mhm.
on the fact that Donald Trump had been arrested. This is politics. This is a non-story to me. I don't care
Well,
about this.
I don't
You
think
know
the
what I
issue is
wish?
that he's
You know
I
what
don't
I
think the
wish?
news.
I wish Vote Common Good had raised $4 million off of
Well,
Trump's
that's the
arrest.
point.
There you go.
The story is
Exactly.
not that they tried to raise money. The story, as some people say, is $7 million and 30%, as they're saying, may or may not be true, 30% new
Yeah.
donors. It's the response of people to the plea. Yeah, look, we all get it. It was like when I was a kid, and one of the great news stories and horrific stories was the the Charles Manson cult, that did those murders in California and all that horrible stuff. And Charles Manson still is like super famous murderer. The number of people that send love letters to him and marriage proposals.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're going to rally around the guy who committed these murders and is clearly a dangerous and unwell person, but he was then became a celebrity that
Yeah.
people loved and adored and would wear his shirt, wear his face on their shirts. Okay, so there's a lot of those people that are willing to send Donald Trump money, right? In one way, it's like $7 million is kind of a lot, but if you're the former president with the kind of reach that he has and how much money they've raised over, I'm not sure $4 million was all that much money, really. I mean, it's more than he got off selling his trading cards. Yes, I'm sure it was more than that.
More than the
More than,
NFTs. But
more
yeah,
than the
let me ask you
NFTs.
this.
But
Do you see
all
this
in,
as a galvanizing thing for
Yeah.
his base?
totally.
You've got
Yeah.
DeSantis
So
rallying behind him. You've got all the other contenders in the presidential race,
yeah,
flocking back to Trump.
I'm the type of person that whenever I hear analysis coming out and it's consistently the same and it's everybody's in lockstep, um, and I feel like I want to go the opposite direction on it. And this is one of those things that everybody's in lockstep and saying this only helps Trump. This galvanizes his base. He's going to win. He's going to be the Republican nominee. He just won re-election because he was indicted. Like, that's been the consistent hand wringing analysis. All of that makes me want to go the other direction and say, no, like, this will be the thing that breaks it, that breaks the devotion to Trump. However, I have thought, oh, this will be the thing that breaks it
Right.
so many times, and I have been wrong every time. So as much as I want to say, no, like, this is the thing, like, this is the bridge too far.
Do you think
The
it's
reality is that, now I will say this, and I texted you all this story. This last weekend, I was at an estate sale with my wife, and hanging out, and the guy in line behind us was wearing a Trump 24 hat. And so I kind of sidled up to him and I said, hey, your man's getting arrested. And we started a conversation, and I didn't tell him anything about my politics. but was just kind of peppering him with questions and chatting with him, and he backtracked. He said, his statement was, well, I think this is all going to play out. They're going to waste taxpayer money on it all. And then he said, yeah, I'm just wearing the hat. I'm not even sure I'm going to vote. And he's wearing a Trump 24 hat, his full-throated support of Donald Trump was certainly waning in that moment. And so, I mean, that's totally anecdotal. I want to hope that is the reality that, exists across the board. But I've been wrong every single time that I have hoped for this to be the case. So I think, if I have what I hope happens, and then I have what I would bet on, and I would probably bet on this galvanizing his base.
Yeah, I think it's going to galvanize his base. But his base is shrinking. I think it's going to galvanize the hardcore people. I agree. I have many of these individual stories that start to come together into an entire narrative of people that are starting to find a way to back off from Donald Trump. Now, yes, is that going to be his current opponents running for his, against for the nomination? It's not their role. I mean, in all honesty, that's just not.
Let me interrupt you for
Asa Hutchinson did, your former governor, and so some people are, and Chris Christie is doing it, and some people are picking that path, but others aren't. But that doesn't mean that they're not secretly cheering on. Boy, it would sure be great if he has to have a plea deal that includes him never holding public office again.
So let me just jump in and say, Trump's polling has solidified, through this indictment. The other person, I don't know if you've seen this, the other person who has had a significant bump in polling since the indictment, do you know who this is?
I don't.
Liz Cheney.
Interesting.
Liz Cheney was polling at 5% in presidential polling. If she were to run along with the other folks that are involved, she was at 5%. Since the indictment, she's jumped to 10%, which is, that sounds like, oh, that's nothing. Listen, in a race with, what's going to turn out to be 8 or 10 people, she's, at 10%, she could become the significant anti-Trump, alternative that Chris Christie's trying to be, or Asa's trying to be, or, Larry Hogan decided he wasn't going to be. That being said, I mean, she hasn't announced that she's running, but super interesting, that Liz Cheney has benefited from the indictment.
It sure is. Trump. Yeah, it most certainly is. And there are going to be people who are going to rally around Donald Trump on this for sure. But truthfully, I know we've wanted to see his collapse, and many of us were shaken by 74 million people casting a ballot for him.
Yeah.
But overall, Donald Trump won an election on one day in 2016 under a certain set of conditions. And since then, every election that he's had implication on, he has lost. So he has lost support nonstop for 6 years. So yeah, it's true, and it's not going to happen in a bolt of, singular. Now, 80% of Republicans say Donald Trump is a problem. That's just not, because it's an implication on those voters, right? So we all know voter behavior because we're voters too. And when you have to come to grips with, your own behavior and if he's now such a bad person, what does that say about you? So people need to have a way to let go of Donald Trump by which they can still be the reasonable one who made a good choice at the time and now is not a good choice. And what this all piles up to, just in behavioral change theory, in my view, is it starts to give people new rationale and new reasons to say, it's time to be done.
Yeah.
We just can't keep going. And again, this is going to be the first of what will be maybe 3 or even 4 indictments. And here's the thing. This is the indictment about his behavior before he was elected president. Then there are 2 charges coming from his time as president, which included interference in the election after the election in the one in Georgia, and the ginning up violence on January 6th. Those 2. Then there's a third, which is the obstruction of justice documents case in Mar-a-Lago after he was president. When you just stop and consider, this is a person who has 4 possible before, during, and after his presidency. At some point, that gives people a permission structure to say, we can't be chanting lock her up in 2016, and you can't lock him up because it's political persecution in 2024.
Yeah.
There's just enough people that will say, look, it's been 8 long years. Can we please just have him go away? And the rationale now can be, well, he loses elections, or he's unfit, or this is just the cost of all of it. The number of people that want him to be, because they're just defiant of the federal and state governments, it's just a teeny number of people.
Yeah.
Hey, Christian is asking, what's the name of this podcast? Can't see it on my tiny phone. It's called the Common Good Podcast. So we talk about issues of common good. Specifically on Tuesdays, we talk politics.
Yeah.
And
well, listen, let's talk a little bit more politics.
Yeah,
what is
this
happening?
This isn't the only story happening, and this is a really troubling story coming out of Tennessee. It started out as really beautiful and inspiring. Like something close to 10,000 students marched on the Capitol, holding signs, chanting, singing songs, and then went into the Capitol where they are allowed. They were in the balcony area. Over the chamber peacefully, also their children, but they were disruptive. They were chanting, and a few of the Democrat lawmakers joined in, and so the Tennessee GOP has filed resolutions to expel those 3 Democrats. I don't understand how this is like legal, constitutional. I don't know the Tennessee Constitution, obviously.
Yeah.
But these are elected officials, and for the GOP to just say, nope, you're out. I believe they're going to vote Thursday.
Yeah. So they're being charged with, and on the screen here is a picture of Justin Jones. And there's 2 other representatives, another young representative, person of color, and then a woman who serves as a representative in Tennessee. So they are being accused of violating their oath of office in terms of the actions and of the decorum that is required in the august body that is the Tennessee state legislature.
Good
grief.
grief.
And so walking to the well and of the floor in the state legislature, speaking without permission, crowding the desk of either the clerk or I can't remember exactly. I read the statement. It's just really ridiculous stuff.
Yeah. Especially considering one of the Republicans got physical with Justin here, took his phone away from him.
Yep.
Wrestled his phone away from him, and then wants to claim decorum to expel these guys. It's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is truly a level of absurdity in the sense that and this is true in a lot of these legislatures in the Senate as well, that there's this caring for the decorum of things, which is important. I'm not downplaying it. But it's also a moment in which 10,000 students in Tennessee showed up both in grief and in calling for the future, and not to give a little bit of space to act as if the most important thing for us to do right now is to separate out the activists from the representatives and be sure that everybody's following the proper decorum and the proper rules. What's out seems to be out of decorum is that the legislature wants to do nothing about the threat that faces children in the state of Tennessee because of gun violence. That seems to be, a lack of decorum. So, and this is also power, right? This is about young representatives. Justin Jones walked with us when we did it. Some of you who follow our stuff closely know we did a walk around the death penalty in Tennessee, in Nashville, a couple of months ago. Justice was there walking with us. Like he's a street level organizer and activist and stuff. And boy, any chance the legislature can have to take a young, and I would even add in a young person of color who's now been represented and wants to bend them to their will, that absolutely has a lot to do with this, right?
Yeah.
If this was a bunch of taxed enough already gun rights activists that were there, and there were other, representatives supporting that side, I don't think these people would be coming down with the same vitriol. This is a control mechanism inside the system that is saying, we're going to tell you how to behave around here. And I'm kind of glad that they were pushing on those buttons.
Yeah. It's once again, we have made this observation over and over and over and over again in Donald Trump's Republican Party, that the things that they accuse others of are the very things they are guilty of. There's there's a culture of projection that exists. And this is exactly the type of thing of we hear from everything is minor is cancel culture to, the response to January 6th and, how people who were in, representatives, who were involved with that, in Congress, how they should be treated versus then how, these representatives in Tennessee are treated. It is infuriating and troubling and, as if Tennessee doesn't have enough to deal with, with the trauma of coming to grips with a gunman taking the lives of multiple people in a school in Nashville, now to have, this additional trauma on top of that. It's really amazing stuff to kind of watch play out.
Yeah, it's been amazing to see Gen Z organizing and rallying. It's another example of people underestimate this generation. They write them off as, lazy or entitled or whatever, just playing video games all day. But this is another example of mess around with Gen Z and find out. If you push them, they're going to find ways to organize better than you, use technology better than you, and get their message out. And I think eventually make some change in the world. So I think in a lot of ways it's really inspiring.
Yeah.
Well, from the curmudgeon-y side of the street, I will say that sounds like the same stuff people were saying back in the 60s. And there were now young people being elected to office, a youngest senator ever elected back in the 70s. Now he's the president, 70, 80 years old, and he's still around. There was an entire movement to stop a war and to change women's suffrage and to make it a constitutional amendment. All these big movements led by young people who had the energy and the zeal, and they're going to take over government. Now those are the people that are 80 years old, and they're I wish, I hope, I just think it's just takes all of us, and we can't. I don't think you're saying this, Dan, but I just want to add in. Let's not try to load this on the back of the next generation. And
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
All these years of people keeping it the status quo, hey, maybe the kids are going to fix it. No, they're not, because there's always been a few outliers, and we've always told ourselves the story, the next generation, but the next generation is going to be the ones. I mean, truly, Lincoln has a whole thing about the next generation. You should read it. It's incredible. It would be great. Yeah, led to reconstruction and to so it's not the future is not settled and guaranteed that just because people were born after a certain age or were influenced by a certain set of cultural conditions that they're going to do something about it. I mean, it is shocking to me that on major issues like gun violence, we are going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just stunning. I saw the statistic today that now 26 states, the majority of the states in the United States, have open, permitless carry laws of weapons, including Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont. Look, so we've just gone the wrong way. We've just said on these issues, and you would have thought 40 years ago and 50 years ago in public polling, and this is where everybody is, and seemingly nobody wants this, but the majority of state legislatures have said you can literally carry a handgun without telling anyone and having no training at all, and that's a movement in the wrong direction. And on a lot of topics, it's that way, and then on a lot of topics, it's moving in the right way. And you ask yourself, what's the difference here? And it's a little hard to know what makes one thing the other. Hey, also big news, 2 big elections going on in our last 5 minutes. One of them in Wisconsin today for the state Supreme Court, which is this big deal.
And this is the most expensive Supreme Court election in U.S. history, not just the state, but of all time.
For those that maybe live in states where you don't elect your Supreme Court justices, Wisconsin is one of those states that does, and that's a whole nother discussion. Wisconsin Supreme Court has been 4-3 in favor of conservatives for a long time now. Conservative justice has retired, and now they are going to be choosing his replacement. And it's an opportunity for progressives to, win a really significant majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And you think about what that might do in terms of gerrymandering, election integrity, abortion rights, trans rights, gay rights, on down the line. It's a really substantial race happening today in Wisconsin.
Yeah, literally happening today. As you said, Dan, $50 million of spending, almost all on advertising. A lot of it goes to social media platforms for online ads, and a lot of it goes to television and radio and newspaper. That is so much money. Like $13 million is the average spent on a Senate race. This is a nonpartisan Supreme Court justice race that would sometimes have $50,000 spent on them. And it's $50 million because everyone knows not only the consequences are high, but this is also an opportunity to message and to spend for future elections, right? The truth of it is, it's not just about this election. It's about changing the perspectives and ideas and understandings of people in Wisconsin to motivate them. And it's a big deal. So if you know anybody in Wisconsin hasn't voted yet, they should hop out today because by 8 p.m. all the votes will be done coming in, and then they'll and it'll probably be weeks before they know the winner of this, apparently, because they expect it to be within 1 percentage point. It's just going to be that. It's just going to be that close, and so many consequences come from it. And then also in Chicago, so people of Chicago are electing their mayor today, choosing between 2 Democrats. After the runoff, the current Democrat is a mayor, and now that person didn't move on. So now 2 other Democrats are up in the running. So we do our politics day on Tuesday because it's election day.
Yep,
and that's not only the first Tuesday of November every 4 years when it's for president. It's a lot of random Tuesdays throughout the year that we have that we have elections, and they just seem to be there's 5 or 6 or 7 every year that are on non-important Tuesdays.
Yeah, well, today is an important Tuesday for sure, because it's not just election day in some of these states. It's also it's arraignment day in America, and happy arraignment day to those of you that celebrate.
To all who celebrate, yes,
it's an arresting day. The fact that Donald Trump even lost the vote in the grand jury is just really something. Couldn't even. tally that up as another loss. And there could be 3 more of those coming. The guy just,
just
winners
cannot
win. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Winners win. And I don't know.
I like my presidents who don't get indicted. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is a great one. Do you think he'll have to take another one of those aptitude tests if he is ever in jail, and then he has to say like cells, toilet, sink, food
Bars.
tray, bars? I think he's gonna have to say stuff like that. Okay, now we're just being just fever dreaming now. All right. Okay, hey, we will if something happens wild today that we need to be back on, of course, we will. So if you don't already subscribe to the YouTube channel, great place to subscribe. You can even notify you on your devices when you can. Christian, this is called the Common Good Podcast. We're Vote Common Good. You can go to votecommongood.com. You can always follow all of our stuff there and share around the audio and the video to other places and all the rest of it. So good chatting with you all today. And as Rob tells us at 9:59 on Tuesdays, I got to go.